their way. Four lessons. Four lessons from Dr. King's experience that we can use today. I'm going to start by introducing number four, but I'm going to finish with number four. Lesson number four is we must not be controlled by fear. And I quote Dr. King. He said, first, we must unflinchingly face our fears and honestly ask ourselves, why are we afraid? This confrontation will, to some measure, grant us power. We shall never be cured of fear by escapism or repression, for the more we attempt to ignore and repress our fears, the more we multiply our inner conflicts. By looking squarely and honestly at our fears, we learn that many of them reside in some childhood need or apprehension. By bringing our fears to the forefront of consciousness, we may find them to be more imaginary than real. Some of them will turn out to be snakes under the carpet. Well, let's move on to number one, and we'll come back to number four later. You are well aware that we live in a system that from the beginning has thrived on a strategy of divide and conquer. Lesson number one is that people in the struggle will disagree with one another. In fact, King's organization, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, faced heated opposition from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC, including John Lewis. SNCC often criticized King for being too moderate and overly dependent on the support of white liberals. And then we often hear people, especially younger African Americans, say that they prefer Brother Malcolm because he was bolder than King. But we have many Black voices in every era, and all of them are necessary. King's contemporaries included James Baldwin, who fought not only for human rights, but also against homophobia. When I was a student at UCSB and later at UC San Diego, if you looked for posters on the walls of our apartments, Black students' apartments and dorm rooms, you may have seen King or Malcolm X, but you were far more likely to see Angela Davis's picture. While King was empowered by a Christian message, while Malcolm X spoke as a Muslim, Sister Angela, without invoking any religion, early on opposed the Vietnam War, racism, sexism, and the prison industrial complex, and supported gay rights and other social justice movements. And if you still assert that Malcolm was bolder, remember that Angela Davis spent 18 months in prison, a year of it in solitary confinement. And don't forget that Dr. King went to jail 29 times and served 4 months of hard labor in a Georgia prison. And so don't give in. People in the struggle will disagree with one another. Number two, we need allies who are true. In 1964, Dr. King wrote, I hear a lot of talk these days about our direct action talk alienating former friends. I would rather feel they are bringing to the surface latent prejudices that are already there. If our direct action programs alienate our friends, they never were really our friends. And Dr. King was referring not only to whites, but Blacks as well. Let me point out that I, David Moore, as a pastor, for almost 28 years, I served two different churches, one in Santa Barbara, one in Oxnard, in two different denominations. One of the denominations is predominantly Black and the other white. After one of our national conventions, I remember talking with the then president of our mostly white denomination. And I went to lots of conventions, so I had a lot of time to absorb all of this. And I told him something that he said he had not noticed till I brought it up. And this is in the white denomination. Every one of the 7 plenary speakers during those 4 days of convention, every one of them quoted Martin Luther King at least once. In fact, over the years, my white colleagues have quoted King far more than the African American preachers. And I slowly began to see how Dr. King is something of a fig leaf for many of our white neighbors who are consciously or unconsciously trying to cover up their anti-Blackness. We need allies who are true. Lesson number 3. We've got some difficult days ahead. That's what Dr. King said to an overflowing crowd in Memphis, Tennessee on April 3rd, 1968, where the city's sanitation workers were striking. Dr. King said, "We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. I've seen the promised land." And as you probably know, he was assassinated the next day. 4 days later, Congressman John Conyers introduced legislation to Congress to try to create a federal holiday in his name. Coretta Scott King campaigned assiduously for this day. Now, Black people have always used music and rhymes to organize. So we recognize Brother Stevie Wonder for energizing the holiday effort in 1981 when he released the song Happy Birthday. During King's lifetime, he relied on 3 primary records in his speeches and writings: the Bible, the Constitution, and the song We Shall Overcome. Although King was using Hebrew, Christian, and United States official texts, he became popular around the world among people who were not Jewish, not Christian, and not American. And this global popularity contributed to the pressure that U.S. officials gave into to approve the holiday 15 years after his murder in 1983. In fact, Nelson Mandela was in a South African prison when King was killed, and he read King frequently. And after his release in 1990, Mandela would sometimes reference King in his speeches, saying, free at last, thank God Almighty, we're free at last." Not only in South Africa, but listen, worldwide, people started singing, "We shall overcome someday." I remember following on television when Tiananmen Square protesters sang it in 1989. That same year, 1989, East Germans sang "We Shall Overcome" to express their desire for democracy during protests that led to the fall of the Berlin Wall. The song caught on in Northern Ireland, in India, South Korea, in Lebanon. Palestinians still sing it, both in English and in Arabic. Dear one, I don't have to tell you that we've got some difficult days ahead. We've got difficult days ahead. When I say we, I mean all of us. Now, you here know all of this, but many people do not. 6 months into the 2020 quarantine, I received a text message that I needed to call my childhood friend, Arthur Jenkins. We grew up in Oxnard together, but he was living in Las Vegas. Arthur wanted to talk to me before he was placed on a respirator, afflicted with COVID-19. This would be his final conversation. Arthur, knowing he was about to die, had enough breath to preach to me. He preached a message of love, the love that gives life to my hope. And he sent chills down my spine. Well, just like Arthur, Dr. King knew that his time was coming to an end, and yet he preached the love that energizes our hope. Back in 2020, I had some evangelical friends who were pastors that I met over Zoom who thought I had been exaggerating and over dramatizing the COVID-19 emergency. I assured them that it was because they did not know many Black folks, because it struck our communities hardest and fastest first, fueled by high density housing, lack of access to health care, and the comorbidities of the poor. But COVID didn't take long to start wiping out large segments of those who identify with whiteness. Eventually, the coronavirus killed 1.2 million people in the United States alone and 7 million worldwide. This is symmetrical to the return of the Trump administration. We are about to see the unmasked fury of whiteness. Some white folks are looking for ways to prepare, but many of them think that it won't touch them. They were secure enough with the notion of Trump that they were okay with the election. Just like COVID-19 first impacted Black community, the ferocity of white male rage will hit people of color and trans people and anyone who does not identify with whiteness. It will hit immigrants. And if you wonder why I say immigrants and not undocumented, it's because we know that many are experiencing the harsh injustice of being profiled already. What makes this rage so deadly is that it's ontological. I'm talking about white folks who don't even realize that they think they are entitled. Similar to people of color and persons with disabilities who don't realize that they are not inferior. But the damage won't stop there. Maybe not right away, but white women are going to be hit hard. And eventually all humans, our lands, our forests, our waterways, our whole world is going to pay a price. Their sociopathy does not care about historic fires in California and floods in Texas. We've got some difficult days ahead. And finally, number 4, we must not be controlled by fear. Dr. King said, there's probably no emotion that plagues and crumbles the human personality more than that of fear. Everywhere we turn, we see that monster, fear. Every road we travel, we meet that monster, fear. Fear expresses itself in such diverse forms. Fear of others, fear of oneself, fear of growing old, fear of death, fear of change, fear of disease and poverty. So the difficulty of our problem is that we are not to get rid of fear altogether, but we must harness it and master it. Like fire, it is a useful and necessary servant, but a ruinous master. It is fear when it becomes terror, panic, and chronic anxiety that we must seek to eliminate. Again, we can overcome fear through goodwill and love. So the New Testament says, perfect love casteth out fear. Many of you know Jeremiah 25, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. If you are a serious Bible student, you know that this message in Jeremiah was given to people who were in captivity. But a substantial number of those people who heard those words would be dead by the time the promise unfolded. So this message was for them as a whole, but impacted their children and grandchildren. God was telling them that the arc of the moral universe can be very long before it bends towards justice. To these captives, Jeremiah said, Make the most of your situation and do everything you can to find joy in the moment. That same chapter, Jeremiah 29, also says, do not let your prophets and fortune tellers who are with you in the land of Babylon trick you. Do not listen to their dreams because they are telling you lies in my name. I have not sent them, says the Lord. So this morning I say to you, dear ones, please don't put too much stock in the posts of your social media friends who presume that in 4 years everything's going to get sorted out. Democracy will arise. Some folks on Facebook are saying God is in control. And some of them haven't even been paying attention. Many don't vote. This is why I honor you who are out there doing the work daily, even if your approach differs from mine. We must allow people struggling to survive to disagree. Some of us want to come together and take a stand. Others may want to leave the country. Keep in mind that many of us Black folks are the beneficiaries of parents and grandparents who fled Jim Crow in search of opportunities for their families. We might disagree, but we must not turn away from other activists. We can't allow our differences to drive us apart because we need genuine alliances. We need alliances now more than ever. And don't be surprised, don't lose heart when you find out that people you thought were with us give in to the temptation of capital and turn their backs on us. I conclude this morning with a word of encouragement. We do have real allies. Please don't say that there are no real journalists. Maybe they were just fired from their media organizations or they resigned. Please don't say there are no faithful politicians. Maybe they just didn't get reelected. Please don't say that there are no trustworthy singers or hip hop artists. Maybe they were canceled by their labels. Please don't say there are no actors with conviction. Maybe they're just unable to get the roles they used to get. When you are tempted to think that everybody is in it for the money or popularity, never forget. Never forget A. Philip Randolph, Bayard Rustin, Rosa Parks, Fannie Lou Hamer, James Baldwin, James Meredith, Medgar Evers, Diane Nash, the Freedom Riders, Muhammad Ali, Rabbi Israel Dresser, Chairman Fred Hampton, Bobby Seale, Huey P. Newton, Amiri Baraka, Elaine Brown, Assata Shakur, Mumia Abu Jamal. And when you are tempted to think that athletes only want the big contract, think of Tommy Smith. Think of John Carlos, and please don't forget Colin Kaepernick. And always remember Martin and Coretta, who preached love until the end. Because this is the time for us to love one another. We're going to love those who disagree. We're going to love those who turn their backs on us. And we're going to love our allies. We will love our Judases. We will love one another. As King said, I have also decided to stick with love, for I know that love is ultimately the only answer to humankind's problems. And I'm going to talk about it everywhere I go. I know it isn't popular to talk about it in some circles today, and I'm not talking about emotional bosh when I talk about love. I'm talking about a strong, demanding love, for I have seen too much hate, and I say to myself that hate is too great a burden to bear. I have decided to love. Thank you. Do you decide to love? What is your prayer today? What is your response? What is your heart saying? What is your yearning? What is the fear that you want to face and harness? What is your meditation?
If I may just jump in first, I want to say thank you for this encouraging word. Thank you. This was, and how you connected that to the legacy of Dr. King, and to remind us the speech that he gave back in the 60s still prevail now. And the fact that perhaps the moral arc would not bend in our lifetime. And we, be- Christians, evangelicals, are very well known in trying to package it nicely and say, well, things are going to turn around because God is in control and things are going to work out. But as you reminded us, I know that scripture in Jeremiah. Yeah, it's true. When it first came, many of them didn't experience that. And lastly, I will also say thank you for the reminder that perfect love casts out fear. And I ended this because that scripture came to me this morning very clearly. And I remember saying to myself, there is no fear in love. There is no fear as we give to love. There is no fear in love. So it was very interesting that you ended with that. And so thank you very much. It was timely. Thank you. Thank you. And definitely heightened my appreciation for Dr. King. Yeah, in light of what I've shared with you. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yes, go ahead. Maybe today we won't raise hands. Just jump in, Julian Clint. Unmute, Julia. Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I had to get the audio because we had the Bluetooth. Um, Thank you so much, as always. You hit it kind of right on the nerve, and I was just philosophizing about this the other day, um, about what fear does to people. And I personally have a fear of being outnumbered by the madness. It's like you can see fear um, removing the reason from people. So then, what action can you take against that fear? Like, so we're supposed to love these people back to sanity. Does that work? You know what I mean? Like, what action? I mean, and I think I hear it. What action can I take is just I need to speak up. You know what I mean? Like I need to speak up. And you know, you are the one that taught me personally that, what is it? Apathy or silence is taking the side of the oppressor.
Mhm.
And I am a deep thinker, but I won't speak on something unless I know. You know what I'm saying? I would never speak on something that I haven't fact checked myself, you know? So like you want to be a part of the solution. But that, and I know that unity and community is the solution. But how do we bring down that fear of being outnumbered by people who you can't reason with, you know? That's it's very daunting. So
Thank you, Julia.
that's why I love to hear from you guys. Yeah. You guys have solutions.
It's true.
Better than mine, hopefully.
Together.
Together.
David, I was amazed at you pointed out that Martin Luther King was quoted more often than others. When I was when I was a teenager and a little younger, in fact, I watched the assassination of him on TV, and was shocked. But what brought me to being an ally and noticing the difference is I'm a minority in certain areas of the world of the U.S., but the people that are not like it. Well, how can I say this? Being a minority of whatever your situation is, we're all going to get together at some point. I may not be Black, and I haven't lived that, but I'm a minority in other physical ways. So it's, I get it.
Yeah.
So,
That's right.
but I think what I was going to say was about King was that I think he's quoted more because he was more poetic.
Yeah.
You know, his stuff is, and I haven't read a lot of James Baldwin or the other people
Yeah.
Gandhi, any of that. I apologize for my illiteracy there, but I think he was and Maya Angelou was quite poetic, so I think it's easier to quote him. I think
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
Thank you.
He's certainly very quotable, but the point that I was making too is that he, in my experience over those 28 years of being in two denominations, he was quoted more in the white denomination. And that's why I said it. My experience with those evangelicals proved to me that quoting him was often very much a fig leaf to cover their anti-blackness.
Yeah.
You know, King has achieved a stature in the country's story that has been reshaped in ways that can support you can support white supremacy, really.
Or I was going to say, or their ignorance, Pastor David.
Yeah.
As you commented about the pastors that you spoke with about COVID and how they thought you were blowing it out of proportion. Something that I have learned in being with this community is I don't fully understand the struggles that the community of people of color have had or current or still experience. Yes, I'm a woman. Yes, I've had other things, but many white people are ignorant about the truth of the lives of people of color. So I mean, maybe I'm saying that sort of in self-defense because I don't want to view myself as anti-Black, but I certainly view myself as ignorant. And that I believe that that's what a lot of white evangelical pastors, in quoting King, are covering.
Yeah.
You know, and if we think about historically how King was not liked, and now all of a sudden it's the thing
Yeah.
for them to quote King and be, you know, on that side, if you will, and they really don't understand everything that goes
Willful
on.
ignorance. Willful
Mm.
ignorance. I'm going to jump in because on my side of the track, what I'm hearing is with the whole thing with Colin Kaepernick and all that, and literally they said, why can't he be more like Dr. King and do this and that? And I was like, excuse me, your folks are the ones who jailed him. He was public enemy #1. And now all of a sudden he's your poster boy for how Black folks should be talking and acting. I take offense to that. Don't be quoting him now if you wasn't quoting him then. And don't quote him now if you don't believe in the policies that he's saying. We can't pull up bootstraps if we don't have bootstraps to pull up. I'm really tired of those white folks going, they should be more like Dr. King. Really? Really? I'm sorry, that whole thing about, I totally agree, Pastor, with this whole more white folks quoting him because they think that's the brother you should be following. You should be in lockstep with King because he would, and they say all this stuff. And I just look at them and go, really? What was Kaepernick doing that was so offensive to you?
Challenging capitalism. That's what he was doing.
Boom. And the way our first police forces were slave catchers.
They still are.
He was not being
Indeed.
a nationalist, Jade. He was not being a white nationalist, which is what everybody wants, right?
Yeah.
I
Sorry,
noticed that.
I just kind of jumped in there because that
No,
stuff
well,
just
that's
angers
what-
me,
That's
Yeah.
what it's about. But I noticed Diane Fox has been unmuted for quite some time here. Were you going to say something?
Oh, I go in a different direction. I just want to say thank you first of all, and then I did have the quotes, talking of the poetry on my when I had an office. They were on my office door. Hate cannot cast out hate. Only love can do that. Darkness cannot cast out darkness. Only light can do that. So, yeah. But that's a different direction than the conversation has gone.
Well, we can go
Those
different
are beautiful
directions.
sentiments.
Yeah.
We can go different directions. In fact, Diane, I meant to mention earlier, Diane sent me a copy of a letter that she wrote when she was in Algeria to her friends. And to me, the letter is like a historical document. And to her, it was just a letter she sent to her friends. But she was there in Algeria when the revolution was underway. And she's given me permission. You all, if you want a copy of the letter, just email me. I will send it to you.
Mhm.
And the Panthers were there at the same time.
How about that?
Jacob's got his hand up.
Jacobo.
Jacob.
Comment is question, and my comment is my first lesson in high school history class was what is apathy and why it's not okay to be apathetic. It was day 2 in ninth grade history and it stayed with me. My question is, if God can fix the mess we're in the world, can God do? I struggle with this every day as an agnostic, and I think if I knew what God can do, if I wouldn't be an agnostic, I would be a Christian or a Jewish.
You know what, Jacob? You just
Mhm.
described yourself because you had me thinking, what if everybody's first lesson in high school history was that apathy is not okay. That would be, that would be just absolutely amazing. And, I think that God works through people. I don't think that God's just going to descend from the clouds and fix things. I think that it's the raising of our consciousness collectively, and we decide we're not taking this bullshit anymore. But that's really what I was talking about today. There are so many of us who are just, everything's going to work out, and everything is not going to work out. We are going to work things out if they're going to be worked out. I see Linnea's hand up.
Yes, I've been listening to everybody's comments and reactions, and they're profound and helpful to me. And I wanted to circle back to Julia's question. How do you bring down the fear of being outnumbered by people who don't see reason at all? A number which seems to be increasing across the United States, maybe the world, but just an observation. I've felt that so many times, Julia, and sometimes what happens is feeling utterly outnumbered and defeated and overwhelmed by the whole situation, only to find myself in a situation or being presented with a situation with maybe just one person where I can show love, and it'll be a person who is among those who refuse to see reason and who seem to be believing false narratives and all that. And suddenly I'm in a one-on-one with this person, and I don't know. It's just an observation. I don't know exactly what it means.
Mm.
Can I say
think-
something?
Go ahead.
Yeah, Heidi, thank you so much for what you share. I like to share this. There is a bookstore in Pasadena called Octavia's Bookshelf, and the name of the bookstore was obviously it's from Octavia Butler, named after her. I know, Pastor David, you have mentioned about her a little bit last Sunday. No. Sorry. It was okay. I think you were sharing about her with.
I was text messaging with you. Yes.
Oh, okay. I haven't really had a chance to check that out, but I am very, very curious about her, and I wish that you will share about her. If you don't have time right now, then can you make some time and share with all of us? But anyways, oh my goodness, I'm learning so much. Even during this time, staying at the hotel, we are so fortunate. We have met this Black family who was an apartment owner in Tadina. It's all gone. But then, so he shared with us about his story, but then he was really sad. He is evacuating with her mother and a wife. So we met this family here. Yeah, very difficult. But the next day we heard the good news that he's got a contact from the insurance company, and then I think they really worked hard for him, and the bank said, yeah, go ahead and rebuild it again, so that he was able to get the loan from the bank. So we rejoiced together.
Ah,
Yeah, so glad. So I'm so encouraged.
I'm
And
feeling
then
that family's relief.
yeah,
And I
and
don't
all
know them,
this
never
time,
heard of them.
I know. But anyways, I just found out another thing is, yeah, the Octavia's bookstore. I found that they are raising money to keep the bookstore
Yes.
open, access to the community, a blessing to the community, and it's a huge thing. The owner is a Black woman, and it's not easy to even for her to open the bookstore and then keep going her
Stay in
work.
business.
Yeah. So yeah. So all this experience, I'm learning so much, and then guess what? I had really my anxiety is gone.
Oh, so you're embodying what Dr. King was talking about. The love gets rid of the
Yeah.
fear. You
Yeah.
know,
People.
I want to let everybody know what you're talking about, Octavia's bookstore. Octavia Butler was a novelist, the late Octavia Butler. And many people have read her series. The book, The Parable of the Sower, is so poignantly relevant right now because it starts out with devastating fires in Los Angeles. She wrote the book in 1993, but it starts out with devastating fires in Los Angeles in the wake of a presidential election. President Christopher Donner is his name, who campaigns on the slogan "Make America Great Again," and well, read the book. It's not light reading. I found that if I read it at night, it affects my sleep. So, you know, maybe you could handle it, but I would say read it some other time than before bedtime, because it's like what's happening right now. Yeah.
もう一個. One more thing. I was able to connect with this platform, studying platform in Japan. I was able to join. No, actually, I missed my Korean language lesson, but they are like a NPA, New Era Asia Peace Academy. So the peacemakers got gathering many scholars, many educators. They are great resource to people like me. Just I'm not high educated activist or anything, but then they offer opportunities to learn about focus on East Asia, especially Korea Peninsula, and plus more. And like there is a course, it's focused on Gaza. Many things are going on, and I really really appreciate this platform and community. But I was able to connect with them after the lesson, so I just wanted to let them know that we are okay. And I shared a little bit about where we live, Pasadena, Altadena, and then started seeing all this equality towards minorities, Black communities. So I was sharing that. So they show really interest. And then one of the ladies, she used to be a professor, writing a lot of on なんだろう POW, I guess. But she really suggested that you know, she likes to bring somebody to, you know, educate us, you know,
Mhm.
because there's no really black voice at all.
Yeah.
I mean, they want to learn, but there's no resource.
Yeah.
And even this fire, you know, Eaton fire with, you know, Black community in Altadena, Pasadena,
Yeah.
who, you know, nobody will be sharing about it. They're like, oh, wow, you know, they really want to learn. So the other one, PD, please, if they set the, you know, time, date and time, please,
Okay.
speak.
I told you before that I will make myself available.
Please, they will really appreciate it.
They will.
Let
Yeah,
me say
they really want to learn.
let me say
Hmm?
two things. Sayuri, you said that you are not very highly educated, but I would say you are not formally educated because you are an autodidact, which means you have pursued your curiosity to learn. I mean, I've learned a lot. I still learn a lot from you. So you are highly educated, just not formally educated. And I respect your education and I rely on your education. Okay. So the second thing is, um, I do make myself available to people who want to hear, a Black voice, a conscious Black voice. And that's because over the years, many doors have closed. And in fact, Kenichi, I told you about a month ago when you were visiting us that I was being considered to teach two online courses at your seminary, at Fuller Seminary. But then I had to turn it down, and it's not like I don't need the income. You all know that I could use the income, but I had to turn it down because I would have had to sign a document that says that a marriage is between one man and one woman. And I can't, I mean, my class would have had nothing to do with that. It would have been early Christianity and early Christianity in Africa. But I just couldn't, I can't do that. I mean, there's no way I could do that. So anyway, those are completely unrelated themes. And our time is wrapping up. Andrea has stepped away. I don't know what she says. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Reverend Dr. Moore. I think beyond numbers or quantities, the quality and force of love is what prevails. All the hatred, all of the evil comes from pain, from hurt, from ignorance. When the force of love allows us to embrace each other, ourselves with compassion, numbers are no longer relevant. Fear can be disabling. All right, so you got that, Julia? Numbers are no longer relevant. Fear can be disabling, so it is important for us to have these conversations and to support one another and nurture our own inner strength, to find that safety and that peace from within so that we can project outwardly. And I am sorry I will have to disconnect because this little one wants to eat. I look forward to seeing you all next Sunday in person. Thank you all, and may tomorrow be a day for us to embrace each other. Thanks, Dr. King, for that possibility on such a scary and mournful day.
Quickly on the love thing, and I'll be really brief when we were talking about love conquers all, but I really have to say that our very first love in this realm has to be of ourselves. And I think that's part of the problem, is that we're not loving ourselves enough to say, hey, I'm putting up a boundary. It's not because I can't relate to you. It's because my love for myself and my peace is more important. And I don't want to have that, because if Jesus told us to love our neighbor as ourselves, our first obligation then would be to love ourselves.
Mhm. Thank you for that reminder, Jade. And Kenichi's going to lead us in communion.
Oh, wow. Another rich
The
discussion.
evacuated Kenichi.
Okay. Well, you know, the things that we discussed, the 4 points of the message that was presented to us, very timely and really rooted in Dr. King's message, that is still as relevant as it was back then. And we as a prophetic people gathered together as receiving this prophetic message, as in the time of the Babylonian captivities of the Hebrew community that received that message from the Hebrew prophet. For me, each one of this is pointing towards the another way, the creation of a community that is not shaped by the world values, what is deemed to be important, capitalism, greed, hegemony, oppression, fear, but one that is love first and foremost, that is dictated by love, that is void of fear, and that causes us to lay our lives down for one another. And for me, as I approach the Lord's table, the elements are symbol that points us to this kind of lifestyle. I know it's easier said than done, because we are all constantly challenged, and we sometimes want to throw in our towel and say, you know what? Yeah, let's just pick up arms, just like Peter. Let's cut off another year, you know? But as we come back to the huddle, we are continually reminded, and we empower one another. Keep on keeping on. The reality might be that the moral arc might not bend, but it is bending. It is for our posterity and their posterity, and we are all connected. You know, as in Hebrews, that epistle, you know, it gives us they didn't see all these promises, but you know, God has left something much better for us. It may not be for us now, but for our posterity. So let's keep encouraging one another. So let's partake of Christ's broken body, broken for each one of us and for humanity, and Christ's shed blood poured out for us.